All right. Welcome everyone to today's Sparked AU Core Technical Design Group, the 6th of March. And I appreciate all attendance. Thank you for coming, especially for our colleagues in Brisbane. I recognise that there's a big cloud coming over, and it is appreciated that you're here, but bunker down if necessary. So I'll acknowledge the country of the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, Islander people. We acknowledge the First Nations people as the first scientists, educators and healers. Today's agenda, we have, as usual...
Sorry, can I just pause there? Because I think I'm only seeing the cover slide. Is that the case for other people, or are you seeing more slides and it's just me?
No, just the cover.
Just the cover. Okay, apologies for that. Let me redo the share.
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay.
I've got a black screen.
A black screen too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Better?
Yep, we can see now.
Yep.
Apologies for that. All right. And if I move forward, you can see the usual business?
Yep.
Yeah, okay,
yep.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, so today's agenda, we'll talk through the usual business and updates. We'll get approval of minutes, and we'll talk through any news. Then we'll go into AU Core and Patient Summary Workshop Report Back. Steve will lead that conversation, followed with the AU Core Medication Statement Proposal, and Brett will lead that discussion. And then we'll go into the next steps. We'll talk a little bit about the dosage and the next meetings and the working group agenda workshop in Sydney and the Connectathon as well. So just for usual business, the approval of minutes. So I will put motion to the group around the approval of the first set of minutes there. So we're doing two lots. So from the 20th, from the 6th of February, the AU Core TDG agenda and minutes.
Yep, Danielle here. I'm happy to motion approval of those minutes, the 6th of February.
Perfect. Thank you, Danielle. And can I have someone second?
Shame you're chairing, Tim. You chaired that meeting too, so.
I did chair that meeting, didn't I? So I can motion, and then
I've motioned. Yep.
We're
just waiting on a seconder. Does anybody, unless anyone needs more time to review those?
I could second them, Millie.
Perfect. Thank you, Millie. All right. I have hopefully put that up correctly. I'll let them come through.
Tim, since I'm co-host, I can't vote, so I'll +1 on affirmative for that.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Noting one affirmative from you. All right, I'll end the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right. And I'm sharing them. So out of 31 who participated, we had 11 out of 24, which gives us a 46%. We have no negatives and 13 out of 24, which is a 54% abstain.
So just a friendly correction there with my +1 to the affirmative?
Yes, so that's 12 of 24, which pops it up to 48.
Okay, we don't need percentages. We'll be all right.
Okay. Excellent. I'll stop that. And now if I could do another motion for the minutes of the 20th of February? Can I have someone motion that?
Yeah, I'll motion that one. Steve Swinsburg.
Thanks, Steve. And can I have someone? Anyone?
Also, I guess want to double check for these ones because these have been sent round for a bit of time, but they're really big because this is the workshop.
Yeah.
So if you can you click on it just to show people and make sure the people who were there at the workshop have had eyes over this.
Yep.
Could you go to that, Tim?
Yeah, hang on. Sorry, I'll have to reshare my screen. I'll just do that.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. This will be better if I share it that way.
So we sent out the comms for this, I think about a week or two ago.
Yeah.
But it's a big kind of set of minutes because it was a whole day workshop. Is there anyone that needs more time to review this before they're happy to approve?
Workshop that was in Adelaide, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I would like to be the second.
Thanks, Ilya. Right, I'll pop that up now as a vote. And if you could confirm or abstain. All right, I'll end the poll there. And I'm assuming, Danielle, you're a +1?
Yes, that's right.
Perfect. All right, so I'll share the results there. Out of the 37 who participated, we have 10 who gave the affirmative. We had no negative, and we had 17 out of 27, 63% who abstained.
Sorry, I think there is some kind of background noise. So
Oh,
maybe,
yes, I was going to just say, apologies for that. So I'll take those as approved and endorsed, and we can move on. All right, and can I remind people that are on the call to please be on mute? Much appreciated. So action items, there are none from our last meetings. If anyone has any actions, just feel free to comment or put them on the chat. And we'll jump into news and updates. So the AU Base 5.1 preview Connectathon snapshot has been published as of this morning. Thank you, Brett. So you can check that out. And obviously, Brett, you'll probably talk through this at some point or through today's agenda.
No, I think this is just a notification.
Just notification, okay, excellent. Yeah. And invitees for the next meeting, hybrid meeting in Sydney, have been sent out. So that was for the 18th of March between 11 and 12:30, 10 and 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. So, Danielle, did you want to talk through the next slide here, the Zulip poll for dosage?
Yeah, so there's so we've put out as part of what's coming up next is about dosage. So we've popped out a poll on Zulip, a quick poll to just answer 3 kind of basic questions around if you're implementing dosage and what are you implementing to inform the release. And it'd be great if people have, you know, 5 minutes or less, it's probably more like 3 minutes, to pop onto Zulip and add your answers to the other ones that are already there. And that'll provide some of that background context into the dosage proposal when we're reviewing it in our next call, as to where I guess the current implementation is sitting in Australia. And I've just popped a link to that in the chat.
Excellent, perfect. So the next slide here is the Spark testing, AU Core, AU patient summary, and AU e-requesting for mid-2025.
Oh yeah, I should talk to that as well. So I think there was an email that came out just yesterday afternoon, where what we're looking to do is put together what I guess going out and having a look at the interest in how we want to put things together around testing across what Spark is working on, which is core patient summary and e-requesting. Because let's be frank, these aren't, we're not doing things in isolation. Core is absolutely feeding into and supporting patient summary and e-requesting, and they're going great guns on their particular use cases. And so what we did last year was a series of testing events, were these one-day events where we could get a set of national kind of vendors in the room and senior members of the Sparked Fire team, and actually do a whole hands-on experience in a one-day kind of scenario. And there was also testing that was offered offline through use of Inferno and a whole bunch of other things. And so what we want to do now is ask, what are you interested in doing? So this is early. This is not actually saying, oh, we're going to do something on this specific date. It's putting out a short EOI to understand from people, what would you like to test? Do you want to be in person? Do you actually want to test outside of events instead? What are you kind of bringing to that? Do you want to connect with other people? So that we can go through and make sure that we're putting together a series of events that are actually based on the community response. So that's what this EOI is asking, what would you want and when would you want to do that? Like what weeks, what cities, and what do you need in order to test? So that would be great if everybody could have a think about that and have a respond to the EOI, which is going to be open until, I realize there isn't a date there, but so that'll be the 21st of March is when it closes, because that's the week of the Connectathon. So we'll tell all the people there at the Connectathon who don't come to the calls and leave it open to the Friday for that EOI. All right.
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. I'm assuming if you haven't got the link already, that will publish that out with the slides, and you can get that from the minutes of the next agenda. But that's a really good opportunity for industry to sort of participate and shape the specifications. Thank you. I'll jump now to Steve to talk us through the workshop and the report back from Adelaide.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, the workshops, yes.
Yep, thanks, Tim. I'll just tell you when to change slides if that's all right.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, thank you. So yeah, we held the joint AU Core and AU Patient Summary workshop in Adelaide a couple of weeks ago. We had around 80 attendees, so both from the CDG day beforehand and also a number of technical folks, around 80 people. We covered 4 different streams, and today in the report back, I'm just going to be covering the medications in AU Core because the other 3 portions of the workshop were for patient summary. Excuse me. So I will cover those tomorrow in the patient summary call, if you are interested in that one. Okay, we also, it was actually really good seeing some vendor demos. So we had a number of vendor demos on medications and the patient summary use cases. So really put that into context. Just go to the next slide, please. Also, the first part of the workshop, we were really trying to get some information about what people's use cases are for medication information, what's important, what they're using. And these are the results from the day. So I guess no surprise there around prescription and current meds list. I think we had around 120 responses to this, which was actually quite good. I don't think there's anything in there that really would be a surprise. Reconciliation is interesting. It's sort of growing in importance. Some of the other things in there around current meds, patient summary generation and dispensing are also sort of popping up as use cases that are quite important. Just go next slide, please. So this wasn't part of the workshop, but if we compare those responses from the workshop to the ones that we had previously. So we asked this question previously at the two medication statement info sessions. So one was on the 14th of the 2nd and one was on the 28th of the 2nd, so after the workshop. And there were some similarities, obviously, around prescribing, the summary of meds, active meds, current meds. And again, you can see there that reconciliation is sort of growing in importance. And I think that sort of highlights where medication statement really comes into play within the medication list. So that's great to see. We'll go next slide, please. Yep. Okay, and the next question we asked was, which 5 resources have you implemented or planning to implement? So by implement, we mean if you're either exposing that data or if you're consuming that data and displaying it. And in this particular workshop, quite interestingly, we had medication statement as the most implemented resource, again, sort of tying back to that reconciliation use case. And then followed by request and dispense and administration. A couple of people had no idea, which is fine. And quite a few people not yet implemented FHIR, also fine, but we're hoping to bring those people along on the journey. Next slide. So again, we've asked this question before. So at the same workshops previously, the medication statement and info sessions, similar responses for medication request being important. I guess it probably is more indicative of the people that were on the various calls, because there's not a huge amount of elapsed time frame. Requests being implemented a lot more than statement, then dispense and administration. So dispense and administration is still quite important, and there might be some things that we address in future versions of AU Core. Next slide, please. Okay, so then we did a table activity. So the table activity was more of a discussion, and then put up some more mentees. So we didn't actually do any worksheets in this particular in this section of the workshops. But the question that we posed to the group was, what needs to be considered when implementing a system that requests patient medication information? And I did a bit of an analysis of the responses, and some of the key takeaways here, noting that there's nothing in here that's really medication specific. It's more of a consistent set of responses around clinical data more generally. So yeah, the key takeaways. So ensuring up-to-date, accurate medication records, that was sort of the most or the highest priority amongst the responses that we received. Provenance and the source of truth. Searching and retrieval mechanisms, so how to find that data, and I guess firming up some of the API work that we've been working on, the RESTful API interactions. User access and consent was also quite important. The interoperability between systems and regulatory compliance, that was also indicated as being quite important. And then also the patient involvement in updating their own records, that was also indicated as important. If you would like to see...
One moment, please, caller.
Sorry. If you would like to see the full...
Oh, sorry, Steve, I put you accidentally on mute.
Yeah, that's all right. Sorry, I was just going to say, if you'd like to see the full set of analysis on those mentees, there's a link there. It's also on the minutes page, just linked off as well as a child page called Medicine's Mentee Analysis. So that was the first question that was around requesting, what needs to be considered when requesting. The next one, yep. So similar question, the same sort of structure. So what needs to be considered when implementing a system that responds to requests? So this is more on the server side of getting the data and responding to that request for patient medication information. Ran as the same structure. We had a bit of a presentation and then a table discussion, and you'll see fairly similar response themes here. So around privacy, consent, authorization, provenance, managing duplicates, and reconciling from multiple sources. So that's quite an important piece of work that needs to be done. Again, security, access control. Denial of service was an interesting one. So to ensure that you're not able to bring the system down. And then I guess the timely and complete responses. So ensuring that you've got all the data in a reasonably quick fashion. Again, on the same Mentee link there, if you'd like to see the data. Okay, next slide, please.
Yep.
Okay, and the last thing we did in this workshop was talk about conformance. So I've got a couple of statements there that come straight out of the capability statement conformance statement. So around if the requester supports the resource, the requester shall. So these things around shall support, that's very fire language around what you're obligated to do. There was a bit of discussion here around potentially changing the wording. So we asked the question, if these statements are enough for implementers to understand what needs to be done. So some of the suggestions that were raised was that we change some of the wording and potentially put in some guidance around when to use each. So that is medication statement or medication request, what when you should be using those. If these are important to you, so these didn't come up as actions that we needed to actually do anything about. But if these are important to you, or if these resonate with you in any way, so in terms of improving the wording of the conformance statements or around some sort of guidance around when to use each of those resources, which, that actually would be really valuable if we had some sort of guidance around how to do that in Australian context. Please raise a JIRA. So there's a link there for JIRA. It's the fire specification feedback project, and it's within the context of AU Core. You can raise a JIRA, you can get a free account, raise a JIRA, and we can get it onto our backlog for triage and for discussion in this group. Next slide, please. So overall, so this is from the day overall, so that's including patient summary. People found it really engaging, but also pretty full on, information dense. Again, there were 3 more sessions. So there was patient summary medication, there was patient summary exchange, and patient summary architecture. We'll be talking about those in tomorrow's call. And yeah, I think it was actually overall a great day, and I'm really pleased that people found it useful.
Yeah, a few things. I think the vendor demos, as you've mentioned at the start, was a highlight of my experience there. I really appreciated everyone and the examples people were bringing to the table. It was a fantastic event. So appreciate that from the from industry coming together and giving what can be done in the Australian context. I will also point out that Danielle in the chat has put some links to the medications that are documented as well. So some Confluence sites there. Also the capability statement for the AU Core that can be found. And note again, if you couldn't attend that Connectathon, that there are minutes from that are very detailed from the 20th. So please go check those out. Thanks, Steve. I think that,
Cool.
Yep. Anything else you'd like to add, or
No, I'm all done. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. Perfect. All right. So, Brett, over to you for the AU Core Medication Statement proposal.
Terrific. So, yes, through all our work and from previous episodes, we're kind of ready to kind of look at a proposal for medication statement. So we're just going to run through that proposal today, and we will hopefully make a decision to go ahead with whatever we decide. So basically, we're looking at this in the context of all the other things we do in AU Core, and basically looking to add medication statement profile itself and the capability statement updates to include the sort of read and search capability we expect to have around medication statement. We're going to look at AU CDI mappings as well to confirm those, and there's just one extra thing to look at to add perhaps, and basically like the aim is to get something in place so we can take it to the Connectathon coming up, but also with an intent to going to ballot later in the year. So I might move on from there. Yep. So yeah, like all our profiling for AU Core, we're hitting the minimum kind of level of interactions and data we expect systems to be able to achieve. We are looking at other specifications that like IPS and IPA and other specs that have medication statement content in terms of how that affects, potential use in conjunction with those specifications. We have had group feedback out for a couple of weeks. We've had a bit of feedback that's been looked at as well and incorporated. So that's been discussed with the co-chairs of AU Core, and we've come up with this particular approach. We do have a couple of existing JIRA tickets that we will look at as well today. So that they're things that have referenced medication statement as part of previous balloting. So that's relevant and we should deal with those. And we're really just doing the common approaches that we regularly do for AU Core profiling. So the way we are profiling is similar to what we've done for other other profiles. So that's particularly, adding must aborts obligations, being able to regular search parameter approaches for data types, and the missing and suppressed data approaches are assumed to be the same as other profiles in AU Core. So might move on from there. Thanks, Tim. Yep. So we have 2 tickets. I'll summarize these and see if people want to get into it. But I think there's just to address these. There was one ballot ticket where it was explained perhaps we needed more dosage instruction and dosage must support detail, because there was, whilst we had some must support requirements on medication statement at the time, we didn't have any further detail down into the dosage elements in that particular data type. Since that, we are going to come back to dosage explicitly. We have, I think this is, we can revisit it again as part of our dosage discussion. So I think at the moment we just say this one will stay open. We expect to have dosage discussions. So basically no action today. And is everyone kind of happy probably with that? It's basically just a request for that. Or should I say, is anyone unhappy?
Cool. Right.
No, I'm fine. It's on the agenda for next meeting, so it's
cool.
got a plan to
already
talk
ready.
about it.
Cool. And yep, the second ticket is also a ballot ticket, and it's talking about reason reference, and some constraints are needed around that reason reference. So that's already been now included in the medication statement profile that's being presented today. So I think that ticket will be resolved by today's discussion. So if that turns out to not be true, we'll deal with it, I think, again. But I think that one is definitely part of the proposal today. So I don't think we need to probably go into it too much, other than to say I expect that to be resolved. The co-chairs can look at that, and we'll, I guess, take the outcome of this discussion to decide on the fate of that ticket. Cool. That's about it, really, for those. That's all we have in our backlog. So this is repeating myself, but this is a light touch approach. We're trying to not make this impossible to implement. So we're really hitting the main things that we kind of need to represent things, and notably, the proposal today is very much aligned with what was decided with the medication request profiling. There's a lot of common elements in terms of but in the context of requesting for medication request. But so I think we've applied some of the same thought processes to what might be needed for medication statement as well. That's probably good enough for that one. So thanks, Tim. We'll go on to that. So just looking at AU CDI, so this is from our AU CDI mappings page. This material you see now actually has been around through multiple publications of AU Core, and also went to ballot in the last cycle, and without dispute. So I think we are taking these as the current state in terms of our AUCDI mappings. So if you do have any issues with that, I invite you to raise tickets, but I think that this seems reasonable in terms of what we have there. We did have one extra element though, which is on the next slide. Thanks, Tim. Which was not mapped in the ballot cycle. So we have this, I have not labeled things, so I was going to. We do hit the top there is actually what the proposal is to add to the mappings. So we have a date of assertion, which is described in AUCDI, and we have a potential mapping to date asserted in the medication statement element there. So that I think has that's been discussed with the editors of AUCDI. They're happy the concepts are making sense and mappable, and so that was basically looking to take that those things and actually add that as a recognised mapping in the AU Core AUCDI content. The other parts on screen there are the middle section is actually from the AUCDI specification. So we have a description there, date when medication was asserted, and we have at the bottom there the element definition in fire, which is the date when the medication statement was asserted by the information source. So I think it's apparent they are related. So other than that, I think we were just really looking to confirm this. So I would probably like to move that we accept this mapping of the AUCDI term data of assertion to the medication statement data asserted, and include that.
So there's a motion required here for the group. So we're to accept mapping of the AU CDI medication use, the date of assertion to being that medication statement date asserted. And the consideration is the date of assertion is mandatory, adding must support standard obligations to the date asserted as well.
We're not talking about
that's a separate.
Sorry, that's a separate one. Sorry.
Yeah. So this is just to confirm the mapping. Yeah.
Okay. So a motion to confirm the mapping. Can I have someone to motion that?
I'll motion.
Your motion. Sorry, Brett's a motion. Can I have someone to second it?
I'll second, Millie.
Great, thanks, Millie. I'll put a vote up for the current
Can I
motion.
just, before we do the
Oh.
vote, just, well, yeah, I was just going to see if there was any further discussion
Oh,
on
yes,
this, because I
apologies.
didn't give people much of a chance.
Before we go to voting, is there any discussions that people would like to discuss on this? I'll take silence as there's no discussions, and I'll go straight to the motion. So I'll put that up. And we're people voting. Just give it a few more seconds, and we might have hit that. Danielle, do you have your +1? Thank you. All right, so I'll end that poll now. Thank you everyone for participating, and I'll share the results. So out of 39 who participated, it's 25 out of 27, giving you 93% affirmative and 0 negative, and 2 abstain, +1 for Danielle for an affirmative. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much. All right, so that one passes. Thank you, Brett.
Cool. So we'll go on. Thanks for that. So we'll go on to the next slide. Thanks. So now we're looking at the proposal itself of the profile. So I think the yeah, so this is kind of what was in the draft proposal, but there's probably one notable addition, which is the addition of the data asserted element itself. So with that CDI mapping, it was as part of feedback, it was thought that data asserted was in fact an important field to be able to be supported. So we added, it's optional still, but added as a must support. So if you can populate it, you will. And you can, as a consumer of the content, you can expect that that field will be populated and expect no errors if it's so. So yeah, other than that, I think we kind of have these top level elements. I'll just run through them quickly just to name names, but status is a mandatory element, so we'd expect that to be must support. That's passed through. We have the medication reference, medication value, medication X. So that can be a codable concept or a reference to a medication resource. That is, I guess, the primary important information in a medication statement. It's also a mandatory element to have supply one of those. So that again is a must support. With that, we bring in our standard Australian terminologies as part of that discussion for the coding. So PBS and AMT as being the so if you can support them, populate them. We have a patient, which is mandatory as well. So we expect you to supply a reference to the patient this medication statement applies to, which seems reasonable. Now, effective X is the clinical date information. So really, this is when the medication use is effective for that patient. So it can indicate things like I was taking metformin from 2001 to 2010. I can say things like I know on a particular date, like today, I was taking a particular medication. So it lets you clinically describe the use in terms of the timing, time of that use that you I want to assert. We have the date asserted, which is really saying when this statement was made. So it gives you an indication of how current the statement is, and whether if that is that is useful, I guess, interpreting the currency of that, and also there may be some requirement to ask questions and things like that if the assertion is a long time ago. So these are all things that are useful to do when consuming. Reason stuff. So we've got reason code and reason reference, which kind of work together. That's the reason the medication is being used. So we have the codable concept part of that, and we have the referenced content. So the actual context and reason for the medication use can be a condition, an observation that was made, or a diagnostic report. That's a little different than medication request, which doesn't have diagnostic report as a reason. So this brings in a AU-based diagnostic report as a reference to that content. And we have dosage, which we only have the top level must support. So we would like you to populate dosage, but at the moment we don't have any detail exactly what parts of the dosage data type we expect you to populate. But this is indicating we want dosage to be present as part of a medication statement, and we will talk about dosage in the future. So I think probably just worth opening to see if there's any comments or issues with what's being proposed. Is anything missing? Is anything too much? Danielle?
Just want to do, because I know you've got limited, space on a slide. There's a couple of other important points just to draw attention is, this is proposing to be derived off base. So that's where base medication statement is there. So there's more behind the scenes as usual. And I think the other thing about that reason code, reason reference is the proposal is taking the approach that we did for medication request, which is to say that these are essentially treated in for like different data types of the same thing. So while both are must support, you can represent that clinical indication as a code with reason code, or if you have more detailed things to say and an actual problem diagnosis kind of thing, you can use like a condition resource and reference that. And so for responders, they're not required to support both, but they should be supporting at least one of them. But requesters are expected to do no error if they receive like either. So they do have to support both. I just wanted to draw people's attention to that part.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's, if you have existing history that includes some things like condition and reports, it's, you can use them as the reason. So yeah, I think that's very much worth pointing out. It's a little unusual. I think that they're two different elements. Yep. Steve. Oh, I can't hear you on mute.
Sure, I'll turn that off. AU-based diagnostic report as a reference on reason reference. In medication request, we don't have that. We only have core condition and observation.
Yeah.
It's correct, not a legal fire.
It's not a
type.
Allowed reference type. Yep. There's a difference in the...
It's the underlying fire resource.
Yep.
Medication request does not allow the association of diagnostic reports, but it's an allowed type for medication statement.
Yeah.
Right. But okay. So we definitively want to allow diagnostic reports, and we're going to in this particular one, and it's an AU-based profile of that.
Yeah, there's two reasons for that. One,
yep.
We've agreed, I think, through AU Core R1 that we have to have incredibly strong reasons to prohibit anything allowed by the fire standard in core. We're saying it is never possible that your reason could be a diagnostic report. I don't think we can say that. And the other is wherever we're referencing another resource type, we do the AU Core profile if it exists, and where we don't yet have a core profile but we have a base, we type it to the base profile. We adopted that profile principle in R1, so that's why that has AU-based diagnostic report there.
Okay, thank you.
If anyone else has a comment.
All right.
I don't hear any. I would like to motion we accept this profile as presented, and that will allow us to get into further testing.
Do we have anyone to second that motion?
I'll second that. Steve Swinsberg.
Thanks, Steve. Noting that we have opened the floor and at this point, no comments or feedback other than some small discussion points about the other parts. I'll set up this as a current motion or launch the poll. All right. The vote's coming in. Give it a couple of seconds and we'll share those results with the group. Thank you, Danielle, for your +1. So I'll make sure that I call it out in, in the numbers. Okay, I'll stop it there and share the results. So affirmatives have 26 out of 31, which includes Danielle's vote. We've got 1 negative, and then we have 5 abstains. For the person who called out the negative, do we talk through that, or it's a pass motion?
I mean, as a point of order, we should ask for the comment on the negative vote as to what aspect of the proposal, what that feedback is.
Yeah. So for the person who called out a negative, is it something that you would like to raise right at this point? If we could get...
Yeah, so it was more of a question really with regards to recent reference. Heath raised that medication request doesn't support a diagnostic report for recent reference. I'm just wondering, in the scenario where we're converting if there's a scenario wherein you convert a medication statement to a medication request, what's the guidance there? So you can, my negative is more of a question, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Brett, did you want to respond to that, or would you like me to?
You start. Weigh in.
It might be better if, although I know it might be difficult for you to share, Tim, to show that difference there, because I think what we're talking about is the difference between medication request, and I've just dropped a link in the chat if you can put that up on screen, versus what is allowed in medication statement. And I think about just confirming that that's still possible if your use case is to derive a statement off a request, that the profile does not prevent you from doing that, because one, that is an absolutely legitimate use case. So that means that the AU Core Medication Statement profile should indeed allow for that use case to happen. So we should just go through and check that. Could you scroll down to reason reference, where you can see there are 3 kinds of things, well, 2 kinds of things allowed: condition or observation. And both of those are allowed in the medication statement. So my suggestion would be, if you have that filled out in the request and you're deriving your statement and are carrying that information through, that there would be no issue in populating that with either the condition or the observation content you had here. It's just that from a statement perspective, there's an additional type that is allowed. But I see, Heath, your hand's up. Is that on this topic as well?
It is on this topic. I mean, basically the obligations are for more tight for the requester, because they have to handle all 3, whilst as a responder, you get to choose which ones you're going to support. So assuming that you're playing in the role of a responder, Neil, it is up to you. And certainly in the case of creating a medication statement from a request, then you choose to basically only use 2 of them, but it will be a requester that has the additional obligation of supporting the diagnostic report resource.
And
Yeah,
actually,
and
as
it's
I
really
was, sorry,
go on.
sorry, as I was asking the question, I realized that our use case is more in the direction of request to statement, not statement to request.
Yeah, in which case I think that's that's fine then. Yeah, I don't think that'll
Yeah.
cause you any problems. Or at least that part.
Yes.
There's always
That part's fine.
difficulties mapping.
Yeah.
But that bit I don't think will be any problems.
Yeah, I think you're fine to just use what you have and then populate a statement if you want to. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does that address your negative vote, Neil? Would you like to change?
Yes.
And would you like to change that to affirmative or abstain?
Yeah, you can change that to affirmative.
Affirmative.
Yep. Thank you very much.
You just like a clean sheet, don't you, Tim?
Do you want me to do a revote, or would you like me to just note and
just note it, whichever is easy for you.
okay, and I'll go to Danielle for advice here. Would we like to revote, or would we like to just note and move on?
We can note a change of negative and state the numbers there and just confirm that there's no one else who would like to change their vote who has previously voted.
Yeah. Can I have a show of hands in the chat if you would like to do a revote? If we see any hands come up, we'll do a revote. If not, we'll move on.
Okay, so we'll just change the numbers. I don't remember the totals. I don't know if you do, Tim, or if the minute takers are able to call out the previous totals.
Yep. So previous totals were 26 affirmative, 1 negative, and 5 abstentions. So we've just updated that to 27 affirmative, 0 negative, and 5 abstentions.
Thank you. For the minutes, can I ask you to record both the original vote, the subsequent discussion, and then the change?
No problem.
Thank you.
All right, that's great. That's good. So we'll have a profile able to be done now for the connectathon, and we'll move on to interactions questions, which is the next slide. So this again is using the similar approach to other profiles where we're really looking at read and search as our primary interactions. So we need to confirm that's the scope of this set of interactions for medication statement as well. And we also have presented the proposed set of search parameters we would like to support. So we have a patient, which is typical to all the clinical data records we have. The description there is the same as also applied elsewhere in AU Core for searching by patient. We have, I'll jump down to underscore ID. Underscore ID is really being able to obtain a specific resource by ID. That's been a should as well. We have our combined parameters, patient and status. So that allows you to find, that's something that IPA requires, so we're aligned with that, and we also think that's pretty important because it lets you essentially find active or ceased or stopped, active, stopped, or status-based searching. So that's given as a shell, and we have patient and effective, which is a date-based searching. That's a should only. We kind of think that's an important search, but not not a mandatory one. And the other parameters, effective and status, are brought in automatically because we're using them in the combined searching. So we add them as a may, which makes them basically optional. But if they are implemented, we need to be able to, what it does do is bring in some requirements based on the data type. So it does bring in some of the comparator rules that we have similarly for dates elsewhere in the system, in AU Core. And some explanation of multiple and multiple, just basically multiple and support for those dates. So allowing date range searching and things on the effective date. Status again is a token-based search, so that is a coded search. So that's something aligned with the other token searches we have in AU Core as well, just about the requirement to provide system and what it needs to be supported by responders. I think I've cut that off actually by the look of it. But trust me, what I'm saying is it's the same as the other ones, is what I'm proposing. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess with this one, is there anything here? We had some feedback about effective and whether that was important enough to include. So I probably would invite people to assess if this is, as a proposal would be a good way to go forward. Michael.
I'm just wondering about the shall on the patient plus status for a requester. Fair enough for a responder, but for a requester happen to use that search.
Yeah, that is a good question.
I think from the other side as well is that in theory, a responder has to support all the searches and the requesters only have to support the ones they want to use.
Yeah. What do we do? I'm just going to check what we do for.
Yeah, this is not a unique problem.
Yeah, it's not a unique problem exactly. So,
but maybe just to clarify, just probably the shall on the patient plus status, whether that's
yeah, understand. Yeah, we have done that for medication requests as well.
Yeah, we have said across the board, if you're an AU Core requester, I mean, that's your assertion. It's not just implementing the profile. But if you're saying you're an AU Core requester and therefore meet a base set of requirements on the ability to ask for certain things, the proposal is to say that you can ask, not just for give me every kind of thing about medication you know about related to a patient, but to have the capability to say, give me the current meds or ceased meds. So I guess that's the proposal. And if we're saying that shouldn't be the baseline capability for requesters, then that's this discussion.
Just to note that the IPA conformance statement is a should for patient plus status and a may for status.
Well, would anyone like to amend this proposal? So I think this is more a consensus question, really, is like, do we go with shall or do we go with should?
Yeah, maybe we note Heath's comment, and I think there's an element of we might need to look at that as a separate to this. That could be a worth the ticket.
Could I just suggest we just do a show of hands, because I just like to see who wants either. Maybe.
I think it's easy to just who wants patient and status. Is that what the question is? Like, who would use the ability to ask for patient and status? Is that the question?
Oh, it's more just like the mandatory nature of it. So it's
So you're suggesting a straw? Just like
Yeah,
show
just
of
doing
hands.
exactly, just to see who would want it as shall, who would want it as should, and who doesn't care.
So patient status, who wants to see it as a shall? Show of hands.
How about we do a regular poll? If you go affirmative for shall, negative for should, and abstain if you don't care.
All right. So
And
as
we'll
a,
get all
as
the
a
numbers.
test, not a motion, but just a gauging of the.
Yeah, just gauging.
Okay. So I'll just do a vote for current motion, but we note that this will be just a show of hands.
So affirmative for shall.
Yeah. Affirmative for
negative
shall.
for should.
Should is.
And abstain if you don't care.
Yeah. Abstain if you don't care. Okay. I keep through.
See if we get a clear picture.
Yeah, a few more people participating. Danielle, do you want? Oh, you actually, it's not a motion, so you can vote if you like.
I'll abstain.
Oh, you abstain. Okay.
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay. Be careful with the choice. The outcome. Okay, I'll stop it there. One or two more people came through just then, so I'll leave it for a 3, 2, 1. All right, so I'll end that poll. We have the affirmatives win it with 10 out of 28 votes, and that's the keep it as shall. Negative was 6 out of 28, which is to move it to should, and then 12 out of 28 was the abstain, and plus Danielle's vote of 13 out of 28 for the abstain. So abstaining, no vote.
So I think,
I
guess
the majority want shall.
Based on that, I think you just say leave it the same.
There's enough negative in there.
There's quite a few negatives.
Gee.
Well, there's enough shoulds. You're right. It's not a. It's don't forget. It's not negative. It's should. So it's something that's wanted. And that's going to be a yes. Is it shall or is it should? And that's should. Well, let's do a motion then, or discuss further. Other people who say should. Does anybody want to talk to the should?
Yeah.
I think there's some confusion about which actor it applies to, right? Too. We've combined the two actors. Depends which actor you are.
Absolutely, it applies across both. 100%. That's not a confusion. It's their proposal is across both.
Done that both. Yeah.
If the proposal was split, would that change things?
Well, if it becomes a should, then
it has to be
shouldn't the responder be a shall?
No.
Yes, the responder would be a shall, but the requester would be a
should. No, not at all. That's not at all what the proposal is. That's, I mean, we can around, I think the proposals around, is this something we should have related to AU Core? That's something we have discussed in the past that applies across a set of AU Core capability. It's like saying that that something is optional, but one of our actors actually has to do it. That's not the case. The proposal is that it should be supported. So from an AU Core responder's perspective, even if what couldn't happen, I think, is a requester being shall and a responder should. But both can be should. There is not a requirement imposed that this has to be done. An AU Core requester may in fact ask for other things, and just because they have the capability to ask for other things does not obligate the responder unless it's defined as a set of requirements to do so. And likely responders to satisfy their use case are doing much more than this anyway. Like your standard out-of-the-box fire server is going to do a lot, and they'll document in their capability statement what they do and don't do, and would clarify if they actually do that or don't do that. So whether or not something is a should in requester for a search does not automatically make the responder a shall.
But almost the reverse though, like at the moment, the way it's stated is saying that the requester shall support this.
And the responder shall. The proposal is for both. That's what's documented. At the moment, it's shall for both.
Yeah, the question
And you're
is
right that if only one was shall, if we split the obligation, which is very, very rare in AU Core, there have been enough circumstances where it's come up once or twice because it's been very specific to a need, then you're right that you can't just have shall requester and put should on responder. It doesn't work that way. We've done it the other way around before, but again, that has been very specific.
As a requester, if you don't care about that search, why should I implement it?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because it's up to you to know what you want. So it's just whether there's an obligation for me to implement it, even though I don't care. So I think that's probably an overarching question, and it happens in other resources. Yeah, it happens in medication request as well.
I'd like to suggest that this is broader than this issue, and it shouldn't get in the way of this decision. I think the only question here is the one Heath raised about it was a should in IPA, whether we want to align to APA, IPA, or keep it as a shall. I think that would be where we draw the line here today, and the other discussions can happen in a different discussion.
Yeah. So I guess I would invite, if you want to make that suggestion, I suggest we take a vote on it and take it from there. I mean, we've done a straw poll, but it is based on the IPA that you're saying that, Heath, right, as well?
It was purely a statement. I have no preference.
Yeah, okay.
It's just information.
All right. So I guess the question is where to now? So we can just vote and deal with it as issues later.
Would you like to call for a motion as it currently sits?
Well, I'm still not sure that we've heard from anyone that voted for a should on their rationale.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
I mean, if no one wants to speak up, that's fine, but
I voted should, actually, even after I proposed it, because I think Heath's point is a good point.
Ask instead,
IPA should, which I consider.
Can I ask instead that we do the 4 light items: patient, then patient plus status, then patient plus effective, then underscore ID. As Brett's noted, those last 2 bottom ones come in automatically as dependencies and will change whether or not the other things happen. So if we go line item by line item, I think that will clarify for our point on exactly where we are.
All right. So I propose that we make a motion to accept patient at shall support.
Anyone to second that?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right. Currently, the vote is up for patient and shall. And I'll leave it for a few more seconds.
+1 from Daniel.
+1 for Daniel. Okay, I'll end it there. Now show results. So for patient and shall, it's 24 out of 28, no negatives, and 5 abstains. Perfect. All right. So Brett, would you like to motion the next? Oh, Brett, you've gone on mute.
Yep, sorry. Yep. So where do we end up? Sorry.
No, that's passed. We're on to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess make a motion to pass patient and status at shall.
So that's currently up. So patient plus status at shall. I'll let that come through. All right, I'll end that poll there. And
didn't type in fast enough. Sorry. +1 affirmative.
okay, I'll share those results. +1 affirmative for Danielle takes us up to 15 out of 25. We have 2 negatives and 9 abstains. So we still have 2 negative votes. Would the people who that voted negative, would you like to discuss your negative comments? Sorry, phrased poorly, but any issues you would like to raise or comment on that?
I think we just say it's decided.
Sorry, Brett.
I think that's decided then. If there's nothing more to add.
Decided that because we have 2 negative comments, I was just going for feedback on those 2 negative comments to keep it as should, or maybe they have a different issue altogether.
Sure.
Because we have 56 affirmatives, obviously that's, and 36% have abstained. So that was a percentage, sorry. Do we need to table it?
I think no, I think we've had our discussion, and I think it's clearly affirmative. So
sorry to interrupt. Can I just confirm who seconded that second motion? I have Brett as motioning it, but just wanting to confirm who seconded it.
Oh, good call. I might have not got someone to second that last motion.
Yeah, I don't think we did.
Would one of the affirmative people like to second that, please?
Yeah.
Landon Riley, happy to second it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Landon. Apologies all.
Great. So I think we'll move on. Would like to motion that we accept patient and effective combined search at should level.
Okay. And a seconder?
Ricardo, second it.
Thanks, Ricardo. All right, I'll launch that poll now. Apologies for the last seconder. I was, I was trying to do things incrementally. Right, I'll end that poll now and share the results. So we've got, for Danielle, we've got 1 plus abstain. So that brings us our totals for the affirmatives, 19 out of 26. No negative votes, and 8 out of 26 abstains. So that's passed.
Cool. And onto another motion to support _ID as should as the search parameter.
Can I have a second?
Second it, Ricardo.
Thank you, Ricardo. I'll launch the poll. Danielle, do you have a vote? Yep, perfect. Okay, I'll end that poll there. Share those results, and we have 20 out of 24 affirmative, 0 negatives, and 5 out of 24 for abstain. Excellent.
Yeah, so I think effective and status come in automatically, so I don't think we need to do those explicitly. unless
No.
somebody wants to. Yep. So I think the only other thing I would like to do is just make a motion that we accept the interactions supported as shall read and search. I assume search is okay because we just agreed to search parameters.
Can I have someone second
Yeah.
that motion?
I'll second.
I mean,
the-
yes. Okay, there you go, Heath.
Thanks, Heath. All right, launching the poll. Okay, I'll end the poll there and share those results. So with Danielle's +1 affirmative, we've got 17 out of 23, 0 negatives. 17 out of 23 affirmative, 0 negatives, 7 abstains. Heath, you have your hand up.
You finish what you're doing.
And that has passed.
Can I ask why we haven't included date asserted in search parameters?
Question? Do you want it?
Nobody added feedback to say I'd like it.
No one knew it was coming, I guess.
Yeah, I think we certainly this is not finished, right? We haven't balloted it. So it's so yeah, I think tickets can certainly come between now and ballot and
Yeah.
I think if that's
actually, could you
enough,
pop to the next step slide, Tim? And I think that's where that can be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we have the proposals done now, so we can actually add those into the Fire IG current build. We can take those to the connectathon coming up. We will be talking about dosage related elements as well. So next week we're talking about some of that, and there's decisions to get made around that more detailed content in dosage. So there will be further modifications probably to this profile.
I think I have an answer
Yep.
for Heath. There's no search parameter for it, not a native fire one.
Really?
Well, that'll slow you down.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a bigger proposal then. Yeah. So basically we'll be able to put this in our AU core snapshot once the work through, and we can then go to connectathons, do testing, obviously get feedback through that process. I guess invite tickets and be able to put things on the agenda to discuss if you think there are further changes needed or anything's not working out with the proposal so far, and that's probably good to proceed.
Cool. Thank you, Brett. Thanks for the that took a lot, and I might have bounced around a bit, but yeah, appreciate that feedback. Okay, so now we're going to just jump to Ricardo to talk about the health service in the AU Core 2 release. Ricardo, are you?
Thanks.
Yep, perfect.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I just wanted to spend a very quick couple minutes to let you all know that there's currently a proposal from the agency to include healthcare service in scope of AU Core R2, and this has to do with a push to get this profile in to enable the delivery of the healthcare or Health Connect program, formerly known as HIE. So we believe that there's some benefits to be obtained by getting this profile into AU Core, and the main one or the big one is that whatever we build under Health Connect will have a greater alignment with Core, and interoperability is something that will potentially we'll see more of by doing so. So we'll be working over the coming weeks on a proposal for the community of a very kind of light touch healthcare service by fire profile. We will take into account generic requirements as well as when appropriate some requirements that we have coming from the Health Connect program of work. But as I said, like a proposal will be submitted over the coming weeks for consultation with the community, and this is something that we will be working on. So I pasted a link to the Jira issue in there that's been raised, and yeah, if there's any comments or any any feedback anyone's got, would be happy to take it and address it as possible. So that's probably what I had. So I don't have any more detail at this stage. There's going to be further comms which might come to you through the SPAR main communication channel. Will have a Confluence page stood up to capture all the status and all the updates and all the information associated with this work, and that's again gonna happen over the coming weeks. So I think this is probably back to you, Chair, and if anyone's got any comments or questions, yeah, happy to take them or address them at a later stage.
Yeah, I'll throw it to the floor, see if anyone has any questions or feedback. But because it's quite, I think, fresh, we can maybe move on, and if they do come up, we can take it offline.
Yeah, I have a question. Maybe just a few words about Health Connect program for people who are not like well aware about it.
Yeah.
Look, do you want to take that one, Tim? I think that look, I can tell you what I know, Elliot, from where I'm coming from. So we see in scope of and as you're probably aware, so in scope of the Health Connect program, we have what we call a directory type capability that will be stood up. So we see this profile as one of the profiles that will be supporting that piece of work. One thing that's worth noting is that the other profiles we also believe will be required to support that piece of work. They're already in core. So we're talking about practitioner role, organization, and location. So they're already there. So we just saw this as a natural kind of thing for us to do, just to get the last of these profiles we believe will be needed to support that phase one of the Health Connect piece of work, which again will likely be a directory of some sort.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ilya, for the question. Anyone else? So yeah, as discussed, it's early inception, coming together, more to come, and other Connect funds that the agency will sort of let the community know what we're doing in the space. It's, yeah, excellent. All right, so we'll jump to next steps. Danielle, did you want to talk through quickly the dosage, upcoming proposal for dosage?
I reckon I'll throw to Steve on that one. Steve's looking after dosage, and I'll do the other ones.
Yep, sure thing. So another profile that we're all, another change that we're making is around the dosage. May or may not be a profile, but that's on the feedback page. So we do have a draft proposal for feedback, and this is around the dosage across medication statement and medication request. There's no changes proposed to any of the other interactions or the ACDI mappings. There's a Confluence page there which talks about what the profile looks like, and you can provide feedback directly on that page or as comments. We are doing a dosage information session similar to the medication information session, and that's coming up next Friday next week, so 14th of March at 2 p.m. Daylight Saving Time or 1 p.m. Standard Time. There's a link there. It's also in the Fire calendar. And I think the invite just went out to the group this morning. And that proposal is to be voted on in the next meeting, which is the 18th of March. So it's a very tight turnaround between the information session and the voting on that proposal. So if you could jump on and have a look at the draft discussion, that'd be great. Should we just go to the next slide, please?
Danielle, you got your hand up?
Oh, yeah.
I do. So no, I hadn't sent out the meeting invite yet. One of the things I wanted to check is because at the beginning of the year, we did talk about, hey, we're going to do information sessions. Do you want the invite set out? And I've done that. I just want to double check with the people on the line that you've been finding that useful. Could you, using the Zoom React, if you want me to send out an optional invite for that dosage information session on that Friday, could you put your hand up? I just want to double check that we're not sending out invites where people are like, it's fine, you've already showed this to me on the screen, I don't want you to do it anymore. So if you like the outlooks, put your hand up. Otherwise, I won't send one. So it's looking like people don't want me to send out an invite. We've got
some hands up, going up. Just
a few. We'll give it a little bit more for people to find the reactions if they would like me to send out the optional invite, so it's there in your calendar and you get reminded. Okay, yeah, that's showing quite a few more people. Okay, cool. Then I'll send one out shortly. I just wanted to do that double check before I sent people another invite. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll send one out this afternoon, so we've got that in our calendars. And obviously, if you're uninterested, just don't come or decline.
Thanks, Danielle. Back to you, Steve.
Yep, cool. So just a reminder, we do have this Zulip poll out on the implementation, or your use of dosage should only take a moment to fill out. There's only a couple of responses on there, so it'd be really great if we could see how you're using dosage, if you're using dosage, and especially around which elements of the dosage data type. It's a very complicated data type, so if you're using parts of it, that'd be really great to know. And so that's one of the questions on there. Thank you.
All right, Danielle, did you want to talk through timelines and upcoming events? Yep.
So here's what's coming up next. So there's the optional information session on dosage. These are always pretty cool. So if you're interested, that's the 14th of March, which I'm pretty sure is a Friday. So that's the kind of thing where if you've not been to one before, but you want to hear about the topic, we kind of talk about what is this FHIR thing? How does it work? How have people used it in the past? What are people's use cases? And do a bit more kind of relaxed discussion. And also if people have questions or want to talk through their use cases, it's much more of an informal kind of chat. And then if we have time, we'll do a little walkthrough of the proposal that Steve provided the links for on what is the proposal, and spend a bit more time, I guess, chatting about how that might work or how that might change. And that also allows for any, I guess, feedback that's coming through to be incorporated. And so after that, we're going into our kind of work group symposium connectathon. And Steve, could you put the connection details link into the chat? We've got someone who's asked for it. Now, just for that person who's asked for a dosage information session, if you've signed up to the AU Core mailing list, so you've registered with Sparked and said, I'm interested, you'll get invited to it. Because I'm going to send out that invite this afternoon. But if you haven't yet registered, then Steve will put the connection details in the chat again, so you can take a copy of that.
Yep. Is this for the dosage info session?
Yes, it is.
Yep. Okay, incoming.
So we're just running out of time. Okay, we've got dosage coming up. Like, we're actually going to talk about it on our work group meeting day. Then we've got the connectathon, and then we're going back to our normal calls. I think that'll do. Let's just move on because we're at time and I don't want to run over. And that's our next meeting. So 18th of March, I've sent those out. It's hybrid, so I'll see a bunch of you in person in Sydney. But for those of you who can't join us in Sydney, there's also the online option. Call out here. This is Microsoft Teams. It's not the usual Zoom. So just reminder about that. The agenda is really the dosage proposal, but I want to have a quick call out. Is there anything else people think we need to talk about in our next meeting, in addition to dosage and the connectathon? If there is, you can email me or message me on chat.fire.org and we can fit that in, or we can also put it into the following meeting's agenda. I think that'll do. Thanks, Tim.
Perfect. All right, and that brings us to the end. Apologies for the shocking chairing today. I made a few mistakes, but appreciate that everyone has been in the conversation and been very engaged. So if there's no other questions or comments or any feedback that people would like to talk through, I'll end it there. Thank you again, everyone. A little bit over, but have a great day. And for people in Brisbane, look after yourself, bunker down, and I hope it all just passes over safely. Yeah. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Well,
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Tim.